Okay, ain't no freaking way that I died to Tiny the f***ing tiger. In my last video, I talked all about Crash Bandicoot 1, including its history, gameplay, as well as my thoughts about it. The link to that video will be down in the comments below. So now, in this video of course, we're going to be moving on to Crash Bandicoot 2. The follow-up to the Bandicoot's first outing, including its development history, gameplay, and story, as well as my thoughts on it. Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Argonaut, and thanks so much for joining me for this video. Now, before we get started, I need everyone to note that we're going to, once again, be using the Sane Trilogy for this video, as I currently don't have access to a PS1 version of Crash 2. When I was a kid, I thought Crash 2 was the best game ever, even better than the sequel. Does it still hold up today? Or am I just looking back at it through rose-colored glasses? Let's see how it holds up almost 30 years later. Also, if you like this video and want to see more like it, feel free to click that subscribe button to keep up with the channel. I'd really appreciate it. And now, with all that shameless promotion out of the way, on with the video. As previously stated in the Crash Bandicoot 1 video, when Universal made the deal with Naughty Dog to develop games for them, they had also agreed to fund Naughty Dog's next 3 games. And this worked for Naughty Dog, since game development was becoming a bit too expensive for them to fund on their own. After Crash Bandicoot 1's release and success, Naughty Dog got to work on a sequel in October of 1996. This time, they were given a $2 million budget. That's right, you heard me correctly. Crash 2 cost $2 million to make, which is $500,000 more than the first game. And Naughty Dog developed Crash 2 in just 13 months. This time around, Naughty Dog swapped out Crash's girlfriend Tawna for Crash's sister Coco, which would help put Sony of Japan at ease since they were uncomfortable with a sexy character standing next to Crash. Now, in the Western version of this game, we got no explanation for this. Tawna just vanished. But in the Japanese version of the game, in the manual, the reason was she left Crash to get with Pinstripe Poodoroo. Which is a wild explanation. You mean to tell me that she left him to be with one of the guys that tried to kill him? Another change that was made specifically to the Japanese version of Crash 2 was the removal of Crash's death animation when he gets squashed. This animation was removed because during Crash 2's development time, there was actually a serial killer in Japan who left one of his victims as just a head in between shoes. And I mean, nobody would want to be associated with a thing like that. But after 13 months, Crash Bandicoot 2 was released in North America on November 5th of 1997, and Europe on December 5th of that same year, with it being released in Japan on December 18th of that same year. Now, I may have said it a few times, the original Crash 2 was my very first PlayStation game, which he'd actually later on give me as a birthday gift, and was actually my first PlayStation game in general. But Crash Bandicoot 2 was not only my first Crash game, but it was my first PlayStation game in general, and the game that helped turn me into a PlayStation fanboy. When this game was released in 1997, I was 6, and all I had at that time was my mother's hand-me-down NES with a copy of Super Mario and Mega Man 2. I remember seeing commercials about it with the guy in the Crash costume running around, and later on after its release, whenever I went over to my half-brother's house for a visit, that was my first time seeing a PlayStation, and what else but Crash 2 was in the console. After a lot of begging, my brother would occasionally let me play for a few minutes each visit, with no memory card. So it was almost like one of those old demo discs that PlayStation Underground would send you in the mail back in the day. You remember those? I'd basically get 30 minutes with it every other week if I was lucky. That is until Christmas of that year when my parents got me my own PlayStation. and my brother actually gave me his copy of Crash Bandicoot 2. I played the ever-loving life out of that game. Up until my brother took it back from me a few years later and sold it to GameStop, which is why I don't have a copy now. But back then, I thought Crash 2 was the best game ever. The beginning of Crash 2 picks up, like, literally where the first one ends, with Cortex falling from his blimp after Crash beats him in the first game, which, as a kid that never played the first one, I blindly accepted this for some reason. But after he lands, he ends up finding a crystal, then begins laughing to himself, saying, "Of course!" Fast forward 1 year later, and we see Cortex in a space station with a new assistant, Dr. Injin, saying that they needed to gather all 25 crystals, along with Cortex's Master Crystal, before he could put their plan into motion. But, unfortunately, they have no more allies left on Earth to gather the crystals for them, to which Cortex responds saying, if they have no more allies, then fine, they'll just use an enemy. We then jump to Crash, who's sleeping on an island next to his sister, who's on her laptop. After her laptop's battery fizzles out, she sends Crash to get her a new battery. While on the way to what I'm guessing is their house, Crash gets teleported by Cortex to a warp room area, and Cortex tells him that he's changed his ways and that he needs Crash to collect 25 crystals for him from each level so Cortex can save the world. As Crash collects a few crystals and eventually collects a gem, Cortex's old assistant, Dr. Brio, ends up contacting Crash, telling him not to trust Cortex and to collect all the gems instead so he can shoot a laser at Cortex's space station and bring it down. And that if he keeps collecting crystals, he'll have to send all his forces to stop Crash. Which he does, with Tiny the Tiger, the Komodo Brothers, and Ripper Roo, who I'm just now realizing were technically the good guys in this game, since they were trying to stop Crash from helping Cortex take over the world. Huh. When I was a kid, I didn't really pay any attention to the story and just assumed that all the bosses were working for Cortex, and that Embryo was just a good scientist where Cortex was an evil one. For this game, the controls for Crash are pretty much the same as the first one. You run, jump, and spin. Only this time, you can now crouch, slide, high jump, and body slam. It was a simple move added to the game with only the use of one extra button added, and boy, I didn't realize just how much I missed it after playing Crash 1. I mean, I was spamming the slide throughout every level for every other jump. Oh, and Crash can finally do his signature dance in this game. I didn't know this, but apparently in the Japanese commercials for Crash 1, they had someone in a Crash costume do the game. And Naughty Dog liked it so much, they actually put it in the game for Crash 2. Although, for the Sane Trilogy, they swapped out the pelvic thrust that he used to do for the Running Man. I mean, I can understand why, but it just doesn't feel the same. Although, not like it really matters to me. I mainly played Coco throughout the game, and her version of it is just adorable. Also new to Crash 2, you end up in a warp room with the ability to freely choose one out of any 5 available levels, in whichever order you want. Unlike the first game, which was really linear and forced you to play one level at a time. After you beat all 5 levels, which can only be achieved by finding the purple crystals that are hidden somewhere within it, you can fight the boss and then move on to the next 5 levels. Fun fact, Cortex will actually yell at you if you play through a level without getting a crystal, and then you'll have to replay it all over again. Along with the crystals, there are also gems you can collect for Embryo, usually by collecting all the boxes in a level, or sometimes there may be a hidden route you can take for a gem. If you're able to collect all the hidden gems, then you unlock the secret ending, which I'll talk about a bit later. Also in Crash 2, you no longer have to earn the right to do a bonus stage like in the first game, where you had to collect 3 tokens for it. Now, if you see a question mark icon anywhere, you can just enter the bonus stage. Although, personally, I think I did like the idea of having to earn the special stage a bit better than just being able to hop into it. Okay, and now for the bosses of this game. In the first game, I felt like the bosses were the worst part of the game. They all felt too easy and didn't really test your platforming skills, aside from Ripper Roo. For about 4 out of the 6 bosses, it felt like standing around or shifting over slightly to the side as you wait for an opportunity to attack. It makes me happy to say that this time around, Naughty Dog made a huge improvement to them. Returning from the first game is Ripper Roo, who was, to me anyway, the best boss in the first game. As a boss in this game, he's alright. You dodge the TNT and Nitro he creates as he jumps around, and you wait for him to stun himself with the Nitro, giving you the opportunity to attack, and eventually he goes down. Although, I will say, I really miss his old laugh from the original Crash 2. The new one just doesn't feel the same. The second boss we have are the Komodo Bros. One of the brothers spins the other one like a top and he bounces around the field. All you have to do is avoid him and wait for him to stop spinning, and then you can hit him and watch him bounce into his brother, causing damage to them. Then, you run around in a circle as the other brother throws swords at you. Then rinse and repeat. Pretty simple fight. Next up, we have Tiny the Tiger, who actually got his debut in this game after being replaced by Koala Kong in the first game. When I was a kid, I thought Tiny and Crash were brothers, since I didn't know what the heck a Bandicoot was. I thought it was like a made-up creature. It looks like this, by the way. And I thought that Tiny and Crash were kind of the same color and had sort of similar ears. But, yeah. The boss fight with Tiny is basically just space tag. He follows you around as you jump from platform to platform, and occasionally, some of the platforms will turn red and drop. And when they do, you have to make sure that Tiny's standing on them, and that you're not. Now, these are all the guys that were working for Embryo to stop you from gathering and giving the crystals to Cortex. So, they're actually technically the good guys, and Crash is the unknowing villain. But, after Crash gathers 20 crystals, Cortex tells him to go to Engine and hand them over. Now, at this point, Crash is still working for Cortex, but for some reason, Engine shows up in a flipping mech suit. I guess to kill off Crash after he handed the crystals over, and Crash basically fights back in self-defense. Or, at least that's my personal headcanon as to what happened. I've been trying to find a definitive reason and can't seem to find one anywhere. If anyone knows why that fight with Engine happened, can you just let me know in the comments what that was about? Did Crash figure out Cortex's plans, or did Engine just show up and attack him? But, moving on, Embryo attacks you in a giant robot suit and constantly switches up his attacks every time a part of his suit gets destroyed. And Crash fights back. With fruit. Like, seriously. Engine will keep exposing his weak points at you, and Crash fights back by gumming them up with Wumpa fruit. This was my favorite fight in the game when I was a kid, and honestly, I don't love this fight as much as I used to, since it's kind of a lot of you standing around spamming the Wumpa fruit button hoping to hit him at his weak point. But I will say, even as an adult, it's still my favorite boss fight. And if Crash didn't get it by this fight that Cortex wasn't on his side, Coco, who's been trying to communicate with you all game, is finally able to get a transmission in after he collects all 25 crystals, spilling the beans on Cortex and his plan to use the crystals to power his new and improved Cortex Vortex to conquer the world. Now, before I move on to talk about the Cortex boss fight, I need to talk about a new mechanic that they introduced in this game: the jetpack. In the last set of levels, a couple of them introduce a jetpack mechanic. Use R1 to move forward and R2 to move backwards. Now, I don't know about most people, but I had a hard time getting used to these controls. Typically, you use the D-pad or analog stick to move wherever you want to go, and with basic muscle memory, it transfers over to every other game no problem. To now all of a sudden have to always stop and think to myself, how do I move forward again? Made me awkwardly drag myself through these stages at a snail's pace. And, looking at the layout of the space levels, the devs had to have known that most players might have this issue. These levels are all pretty straightforward with a couple of obstacles and corners with no tricky segments around. When I was a kid, I couldn't get enough of these jetpack levels, but as an adult, I would say, get me the hell out of that thing with a huge groan every time I see another jetpack level. But I bring up the jetpack because, guess what we fight Cortex in? The fight against Cortex, I think, was probably one of the worst boss fights of this game. You basically chase him through a path lined up with some obstacles, rocks and mines and whatnot to slow you down, and you just have to hit him 3 times before he can get away and reach the space station. Honestly, it feels like a supersonic boss fight where you're just running around chasing after the main enemy with a time limit. After you beat him, Crash goes back home and hangs out with Coco as she wonders whatever happened to Cortex, and the player sees his space station still up there, along with hearing him laugh. You know, basically the game telling the player to go out and collect all the gems. Now, in the secret ending that you unlock after collecting all the gems, Embryo lets Crash use his laser, which shoots down Cortex's space station. Although, I do wish we could see Cortex flying from the debris while screaming, kinda like in the first game, when we see him falling from the blimp while screaming. That would have been hilarious. And, on another note, in the original Crash 2, he would used to do this victory dance after beating a boss. But now, in the Sane Trilogy remake, he just does this. I really wish that they let him keep his victory dance after beating bosses, but maybe it would have looked too silly or something? I don't know. After Crash Bandicoot came out, critics and players alike responded positively to the game, and it sold 1 million copies in the US alone by February of 1998, and 800,000 copies in Japan, making it the highest-selling non-Japanese title in Japan. Funny enough, knocking over its predecessor for that title. It actually overall went on to become one of the top-selling games of all time for the PlayStation 1, specifically at rank 7. Obviously, Naughty Dog wasn't done yet, as Universal still had to fund their next 2 games as per their agreement, and they would go on to create a sequel to Crash 2 in less than a year. After replaying Crash 2, I think it was an improvement over the first game in practically every way. The bosses, while still pretty easy, were more of a challenge this time around, and Naughty Dog also implemented a couple of new moves and mechanics for Crash, and dialed back the difficulty slightly, making for a more fun and less punishing experience. Basically, Crash 1 walked so Crash 2 could run. Crash 2 also had a lot of secrets and stages that you could find in some levels, like hopping into this pit that the bear falls in the Unbearable level, or hopping onto these random nitro boxes and behaving, which adds to the overall replayability of the game. While I still had a lot of fun with this game now, I don't find this game to be as fun as I thought it was back when I was a kid. And those are my thoughts on Crash 2. As a kid, this was easily my favorite game of the trilogy, since it was my first jump into 64-bit gaming, coming from 8-bit, and I'll admit, there was always a bit of a bias with this one over the sequel, although I know that most people found the third game to be the best one, and overall it probably is better, but I'm wondering if my thoughts about that will change as I replay the third game. But, did you agree with my thoughts? Did you disagree? What are your favorite memories and moments from Crash 2? Let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to hear from you. And until then, I'll see you all next time when we take a look at Crash Bandicoot Warped! Thanks so much for watching.